Hello and a very warm welcome to today's Linkability Insights live stream. I'm your host, Lynnaire Johnston. Today we're talking books, and we're going to be talking books with two great friends of mine, Jacqui Lane from Sydney and Gillian Whitney from Texas. Now, I've had a lot to do with both ladies over the years when it comes to books, and their expertise will become apparent today as we discuss AI visibility and books. So the real question is, given that AI can write books, is there still value in having a book or multiple books? Now, I already know what the answer is, and these two ladies are going to give us the same answer with a lot of interesting facts and figures and ideas and suggestions, and probably the odd warning along the way about what we need to do when it comes to writing a business book. So my own interest in books began well before I even went to school, and it has never disappeared since. I was reading Lord of the Rings by the time I was 12, and it's still one of my favorite books, I have to say, even though I think the movies ruined it. But the point being that I believe books have a very strong place in many people's lives. They are great for education, they're great for learning, they are great for just taking ourselves out of where we are and giving us a little bit of maybe a bit of fantasy, a bit of something we would never see otherwise. And so books to me are critically important still. Now, whether you read a hard copy book like it's still my favorite, or whether you like to read yours on Kindle or even an audiobook, which I do a lot of as well, books, I believe, are here to stay. But we're going to talk to our guests about that in just a moment. First, though, I would like to just say a hello to Mel Richards, who is looking after the back end of our live event today. Thank you for the time, Mel, and helping us make this an event, which will hopefully go smoothly. And also a shout out to Meryl Cass. Now, Meryl is our extraordinary connector in chief, who makes sure that people visit our live stream, and he invites all manner of interesting people. So if you are in the comments today, please do say hello and let us know where you are from. I always love to know where people are joining us today from. It's always a bit special. The lives are always a bit special because you can actually see people in the comments when they do say hello. So just a quick shout out then to Sue and to Daniel and to, who have we got up there? I think I saw Shark. Hi, Shark. Nice to see you with us today. Thank you so much for popping along. All right. So questions in the comments, where you're from in the comments, a hello in the comments. And now let's talk with our guests. So I want to just ask, first of all, for each of them to tell us in a sentence or two who you typically work with and what's the thing you care most about when it comes to business books. Jacqui, we'll start with you. Jackie's an honorary Kiwi, by the way, even though she lives in Australia.
Okay. Firstly, I describe myself as an Australasian, so that's a nicer way of looking at it. I hold both passports. So who do I work with? So typically I work with business leaders, entrepreneurs, senior consultants, people who have been running their own business or who are in senior executive levels of companies. So people who have decades, maybe 2 or 3 decades of practical experience in the area that they are planning to write about.
Thank you. Gillian.
And I'm coming in from Texas, and I'm global citizen for passports for citizenships. I'm going to work on that Australia, New Zealand one, though, because I think that'd be a good one to add to my many different ones. So I'm a business book coach, and I'm also an author visibility strategist. So I help people take their books and write them, publish them, and then get them seen. So I kind of do all three. I primarily work with coaches and consultants who have expertise and they want to turn it into a book. And primarily those people that have been thinking about writing a book for a very long time and want a faster way to get that out there. So that's my expertise.
It is a big step from thinking about I must write a book to actually doing. So I have found the process really interesting. Jacqui helped me on my first book, Linkability, and it was a really great process and I learned a lot from it. So Jacqui, let's ask you the first question today. A lot of senior leaders that I talk to have had a book in mind for years, but never done anything about it. And I put myself in that category until I did get mine going. So what's usually holding them back? And is it a good reason?
So typically it's fear, and that comes out as imposter syndrome. And I constantly find this really interesting because, both Gillian and I are probably dealing with very highly capable executives and people in their field, and they come across as being super confident. But when it comes to their own writing and their own ideas and their own book, this whole imposter thing comes sweeping in. And when I've delved into it a lot, primarily that is because they fear the criticism of their peer group. Because it's one thing to stand up and talk to a group of people. It's another thing completely to put those ideas or, have your ideas and put them in paper and share that with the world. And I've had people who say they just can't do it. So that fear imposter syndrome thing would be the biggest thing that I see.
Certainly that was what hit me when I decided to write my first book. I was lucky, though. I had an impetus to write it in that I had just been ranked New Zealand's #1 LinkedIn expert, and my rationale was, what does everybody have? What does every expert have? They have a book, and so that really prompted me to get going on it. But all the way through it, I felt I really wasn't sure because I'd never considered myself an expert before, and so it was a real struggle for me to overcome that imposter syndrome and get the book out there. But once I did, I was really surprised that the response wasn't, oh, you think you can write a book, do you? It was, oh, wow, this is fantastic. We really like it. The response was amazing and opened a lot of doors that I did not even know were closed. So I think there's some real value in writing a business book for sure. So Gillian, what separates the books that actually do something for a person's career and ones that just sit on a shelf?
I think it's all about getting the book into the right people and getting that book read. And I think one of the largest mistakes people make is that they think they have to, probably combating that whole imposter syndrome, is I have to write the biggest, best book ever. And they go out and they decide they're going to write the War and Peace of whatever their subject. I'm going to everything but the kitchen sink is going to be in this book. But the problem is, if they don't have clarity about, well, what's the purpose of what you're writing about, and you don't know who you're writing it for, you're just stuffing a lot of stuff into a book, and that's not necessarily going to get read. And I've seen a lot of people do that, and it breaks my heart because I know how hard they work. But in my opinion, you're better off targeting a specific audience with a specific one idea of, really get down to that clarity of purpose and know what's the goal of the book, who's the book for, and make it only be as long as it needs to be. And I tell people, go for that airplane read. Let somebody hop on a plane in Dallas and get to Chicago. And by the time they're in Chicago, they've read it and now they can take action. So I think that's what's really important, is making sure you have clarity and that it's a book that can be easily consumed, and then the person can take action.
That makes sense to me. Although if you're traveling from New Zealand to, say, London, it could be quite a lot longer read, I have to say, Gillian. But I take your point that that is a really good sense. I think, too, there's a lot of padding in some books. It's not necessary that people find a little bit difficult these days. And certainly I think that if I were writing Linkability again, I would probably cut it down considerably. Right, let's move on. And this is a question for both of you, and we'll start with you, Jacqui. I said in my own post this week that a book is still the best business card that you can create, because I believe it is. Do you agree with that? If so, does it still hold up in 2026? Why? when there are so many other ways to demonstrate expertise?
Okay, so two of my favourite subjects. So I'm like you. I'm a print book person. So I've always been focused on print books. But I think having a print book as one of your suite of ways to communicate your idea is good. So I actually think that now that we've got print books, audio, and ebooks, you've got a great way to actually expand the visibility of your book to your audiences. And I think even more importantly, in the age of AI and AI slop and fake and lack of trust and lack of human, actual physical book actually is an antidote to so much of that stuff that we're all exhausted by, because there's still a stature and a credibility to a printed book that no social media can really deliver. And in fact, it's hard. So in an age of fake and AI slop, I think a printed book is actually even more credible and stronger for a reputation.
Great. Gillian.
Well, I call books business cards on steroids because they open doors for you and they get remembered. And for instance, if you are applying for a speaking gig and you're up against somebody else, if you've written the book, if everything's all equal, you're both great speakers, you have great topics, but one's written a book and one hasn't written a book, you just naturally have the advantage because you look like the expert already in the room. And a lot of times your books can help sort of pre-qualify your clients, because I'm all about making your books marketing assets, which kind of goes with the whole business card. So if you have a book and you think about what are the things that I deal with on discovery calls over and over and over again, well, if you have a book that takes care of that, literally, you could send that to the client and they could figure out if they want to work with you or not. It kind of takes all that other stuff out of the way. So I think it's a great way for, attracting clients, getting clients, but also getting visibility on the going from page to stage.
Oh, yes. And certainly it does open the podcast invite door. That's been a big thing for me. And it wasn't something that was ever on my radar before. And once the book was out there, the invite started coming in. It was really astonishing. It was just almost like overnight. So definitely. Right. Now, where are we? We are going to ask Jacqui about working with senior leaders. So you work with people who want their books to do strategic work and heavy lifting, not just exist. So what does strategic work actually mean in practice when it comes to writing a book? Can you give me a concrete example of the kind of door a book has opened for someone?
Yeah, and Gillian's actually touched on this, and it's so nice to have Gillian here because I think we've plugged into the same brain actually. So a lot of people probably like with Gillian as well come to me and say, I really want to write a book, and I've got all this knowledge and I want to share it with the world. And I'm going, well, that's great. Can we just put you to one side for a moment and let me cover a couple of questions? Why do you want to do it? What are your goals? What are you trying to achieve? And most people haven't thought about that, number one. And then kind of understanding what those are or that those goals are. The next question is, who are you writing for? And what are their challenges? And otherwise, get out of your own way, because let's assume that you know your stuff. So the real question is, who are you writing it for? What are their top 2 or 3 challenges? And how is your book going to help them solve those challenges? So that's the kind of strategic piece for me. And I would say probably 95% of my clients have never thought about their book like that. So we don't even get to doing anything until we've actually nutted those things out.
Makes sense to me. If you don't know where you're going, how can you make sure that you get there? All right. Gillian, my book, Linkability, is coming up 6 years old. I can't believe that it's been that long. Jacqui, I bet you can't believe it's been that long either. But it's been quite a bit of time in the shadows compared to Business Gold, which is the blue number that you can see at the bottom on my other side, which was co-authored with Michelle J. Raymond. It is the world's only book about LinkedIn company pages, but Michelle was excellent about promoting it, and so consequently that got a lot more attention. And that came out a year later, and of course, as you know, we did another version, and you were involved with that, held great book launches for us, so thank you so much for that. So you work on author visibility, right? So what should someone do with a book that hasn't had the attention it deserves, even after publication? Because this is such a problem for many, many people, I believe. And you might actually want to discuss that about what happens before publication too, because I think most people ignore that part of it as well.
Well, I think the problem that you get is that not all authors are writers. So we have that to start with. But also, too, writers and authors aren't marketers. That's a totally different hat. And I think that people have this crazy feeling of, oh, I'm just going to put my book on Amazon and Amazon's going to sell my book for me. And they don't realize that it's like, no, you have to be strategic and you have to be a marketer. And too many people focus on, okay, I'll do the book launch. And they think about, I'm going to have a book launch party and maybe I'll have something in a restaurant and I'll do this and I'll do that and a couple. And they do that book launch week. And then that's it. They set it and forget it. And the thing is that marketing is a long game. You never stop marketing. You have to continue. And so you need to have a strategic plan that goes beyond the book launch, and you have to think it through. And that's where you have to figure out, what is my visibility plan? How am I going to continue to market this and let people know? Because I'm telling you, I've gone on my third, fourth, I've done 6 books now. And amazingly, every time I launch a book, somebody will go, I didn't even know you did a first book, let alone you're on your third, your fourth, your fifth, because people are busy thinking about themselves. They're not thinking about you. So what we have to do is get out of our writer, author bubble, and we have to become marketers. Now, we don't have to become salespeople. So that's good to know, because most of us don't really like sales, but we have to market it, which means make the book visible to the people that need it. And kind of going with what Jacqui said, if you are very clear about who your book is for, then your job is, I just need to get to the people that are looking for my message. And that doesn't feel icky. That feels aligned with, I'm doing a disservice if I don't continue to market this book. And you can do that with podcast appearances. You can do book clubs. You can do lives. You can do articles. You can repurpose your own book. There's so many ways that you can continue to market it, but it all starts in your head first with that marketing mindset of, I have to get this to the people that need it, as opposed to, I'm trying to force people to buy my book, because we're not for everyone. We're for the people that are looking for our message.
That's very true. I've got a member of my Linkability community who had put his book out about a year ago, Achille Torre. He's one of your clients, Jacqui, if I remember rightly. And he's a member of our Linkability members community. And every week he's out there with a post talking about his book. They're not very long posts, but they always have a good message in them about his area of expertise, which is data transformation and AI. And he's got that, right on the money with the right book at the right time, I think. But every week without fail, there is at least one post from him that talks about his book. And in fact, I'm not certain he doesn't talk about his book in every single post that he puts out there. And I don't think that that is too much in this age when visibility on our posts is right down. Putting in a mention of your book, particularly if it's new, in every post, or every second or third post, is a very good idea. And I also think that making sure that you put it on your profile in your featured section, or even having an experience section or a role about it, is a very good idea too, because most people are not even doing that much with their books, which I think is a real shame. But I did an article just this week, which you were both involved with, that talked about the different books of the members of our Linkability members community. And in fact, what was really interesting about that was how many members of the community are in fact authors. And so I found that one really fascinating to see what kind of books people were writing about. And it was a really varied level of expertise and topics. And there are a lot more people out there who are writing books than I think most of us realize. And before I wrote a book, I didn't know any authors, well, except for Jacqui. And once I wrote a book, all of a sudden they seem to come out of the woodwork. It was absolutely fascinating. So different kinds of doors can open, I think, because a lot of those people, like you two, have become friends. And so there are more benefits to writing a book, I think, than most people really understand. So, Jacqui, let me come back to you. When you're working with someone at the beginning, before a word is written, what's the single most important question you need them to be able to answer? And you've already sort of kind of answered this in a previous...
and I'm going to reiterate it because it's just mission critical. Get out of your own way. Who's your audience? What are their key challenges? What do you want to get out of the book for yourself? And because those things then will help you identify, of all the knowledge and insights that you have, which ones are you going to put into this book to help your audience solve their challenges. Because as Gillian said, you cannot write a brain dump of everything you know, and you shouldn't, because there might be 2 or 3 books in that knowledge, which in fact is a really good point on its own. So, I often spend 2 or 3 sessions with my clients just nutting this out, because it sounds easy, but it actually requires some really deep thinking, because you can't, I have a view that you can't pray and spray. Right, you just can't write a book and whatever at a big brain dump and hope it works. If you're going to make a positive difference in the world, which I really believe about a book, you need to do the thinking up front.
That makes sense to me. And Gillian, when we're talking about visibility tools and the role of books, what is it that actually makes a book work as a visibility tool? Is it the writing, the positioning, the promotion of it, something else entirely? Having a YouTube channel, reading your book aloud.
Yeah, I think first of all, again, going back to what Jacqui said, is being clear who is the book for, what's the goal, and how your book serves that bridge of getting them from here to there, because that's what your book is about. And once you're really clear on that, then you can have that visibility plan where you're saying, okay, maybe I'm going to have a YouTube channel and I'm going to talk about it, or maybe I'm going to try and go on podcasts. But again, you want to go on relevant podcasts. So if I'm writing a book about, I don't know, LinkedIn, then I want to go on social media podcasts, or or what's my angle? Because maybe I want to talk to introverts, or extroverts, so think of the audience and think about, well, where is that audience for my book, my ideal reader? Where are they hanging out? Yeah. Because that's what you want to do, is you want to get in front of them. So you have to figure out, where are they? Which again is probably why you want to build that author platform before you even start writing that book. I know some people that have come to me and said, okay, I want to write this book, but they have no social media presence at all. And I just go, well, how do you think you're going to sell this book? And they're like, Amazon ads. And I said, then they're just going to always keep going. Like, you're just going to continue to pay for Amazon ads. And that might not even guarantee you sales, because people will come with the ad and say, there's no reviews. I don't know if it's got social proof. So it's really tricky. But if you don't have that platform, then you probably don't even know who you're writing to in the first place. So you're doing what Jacqui said, spray and pray. So I think, our visibility is about getting clarity on the goals, what are you covering, and how are you helping people, what's keeping them up at night, those kind of crazy things, and then being really clear on that audience. And then you can make those visibility goals.
That makes sense to me. Right. One more for you both in this part of our show today. And this one is where we turn to AI. We're going to talk more about that. But for now, I want to just canvass this particular idea. AI, do you see how I rolled my eyes then? Can write a book in hours. But does that change the strategic case for writing a book yourself, or does it actually make it more important? Jacqui, you first.
I'm very vocal on the subject, as you might imagine. AI can't write. Okay, it wasn't designed to write. It can't write. It is a predictive machine that can pull together bunches of information and then it spews it out, usually in 3 cadence paragraphs or 3 cadence words, with lots of EM dashes in between. And it doesn't have the capacity to write what we call long form content. So AI can't write. It can do lots and lots of really great things. It can help you with your book titles, your content structure, your marketing, some of your marketing, draft media releases. There's a bunch of stuff that it can do, but it cannot write a book, and don't even try. Because if I see a book and it takes me 1 paragraph to know whether it's been written by AI or not. And none of us want that. That's AI slop. And we don't need more of that in the world. So don't do it. It can't do it.
That was very definitive. Gillian.
Yeah. I think that AI is an incredible tool, and it can definitely help you with your organization. It can help you if you are missing a story and you're like, okay, I've talked about this on a podcast, or I talked about this on a video. You could feed those transcripts into AI and it could help you get clarity on a story, and maybe, kind of step back a little bit of like, here's where the story should actually begin. You kind of had this whole preamble we didn't need, and it can help you with those kind of things. But if you're just saying, okay, I'm just going to go to ChatGPT and I want to write a book about sales, and you just ask it to write it for you, that's not a book. That's it's like a report. It's like a Wikipedia entry. That's the level of what you're getting. It's our stories. It's our raw emotions. That's what is so good about books. And see, I'm a Toastmaster first. I've always been a lifelong lover of books. I've been a reader. I think I was reading before I was even born. I was just, busy. I was busy as I was being cooked and baked as a little teeny baby. But it's like I came into the world reading. I love reading, but I also love speaking. And so I have a Toastmasters background. And the first thing that we learned in Toastmasters is stories, stories, stories. Stories are everything. And if you want to cement your point, make your story sticky so that when people you're trying to teach something, back it up with a story, because we don't remember data, and AI can just give you data. It can't give you those stories. So if I start talking about the lessons I learned from my mother or my father, or, what happened to me and the struggles that I went through, people are reading those because they go, if it happened to you, it happened to me. And Lynnaire, you started at the beginning of our show today talking about imposter syndrome, and people would be like, what? Lynnaire had imposter syndrome? Well, then there's hope for me, because sometimes people just see where you are today. They don't know where you were 6 years ago, struggling to say, who am I to write this book? So we need to hear those kind of stories. So that's something AI can't do. That's the human element.
Well, that kind of wraps up the first half of this show today really nicely, I have to say. And we're going to get on to some more to do with AI in just a minute. But I just wanted to stop for a moment and ask people in the audience, and there's some great people here today, some fabulous people, and some people I don't even know. So hello, if you haven't yet met me and you're not connected to me on LinkedIn, please do reach out, because I'm always keen to connect to people who have an interest in books, firstly, and secondly, who take the time and make the effort to show up at our live events. So thank you so very much for that. If you are just joining us and you haven't yet said hello in the comments, please do, and let us know where you are from, because it is always great to be able to see how far our message gets spread. And because we've got a Kiwi, an Australian, sort of, and an American, sort of, yeah, that's not going to work, is it? I was going to say walk into a bar, but that's not going to work, because neither of you are purely American and purely Australian. I'll take that one back. So I should have thought about that one a bit more carefully, shouldn't I, before I started that line? Never mind. Let's move on, because I want to now talk about something that is a little more controversial. Jacqui, this is right up your street. You have been very open about how you feel about LLM copyright infringement, and you have written articles about this on LinkedIn. If you are not following Jacqui Lane and haven't read any of her articles on LinkedIn, you are missing out. She writes a lot about writing. She writes a lot about what's going on in the world, and she also writes a lot about this particular issue. But can you explain it for us here today, why, because people might not have followed this issue about copyright infringement, what's the concern, and why does it matter to someone who's thinking about writing a book?
Okay. So just as a bit of a precursor to that, the big AI tech bros and big AI tech companies have been basically stealing everybody's copyright and IP to train their large language learning models on the basis of the American law, which is called fair use. And what they've argued in court is that because they're using it to train models rather than create a sellable product, it is therefore fair use. In Australia, we have a different copyright regime, and it is called fair dealing. And so whilst it may seem just a semantic issue, the reality is that it is illegal for the tech companies to, in fact, steal this copyright and train their models. There's been a huge debate here. The big tech companies have all been pressuring and lobbying the federal government here to change our copyright laws from fair dealing to fair use. And everybody and anybody in the writing and creative space here has just gone nuts and basically pushed back, and the government has been listening, yay. So they are considering here in Australia, they've said that they won't have what they call a TDM, which is a text and data mining exclusion to copyright. Been very clear that we're going to stick with a stricter version of fair dealing, that the tech companies have to come up with a way to, in fact, pay people for their copyright. And of course, they are saying doom and gloom. It'll put Australia back, and we can't operate in Australia, which is complete rubbish. So in Australia, it is very much a very live issue because the tech companies are putting a lot of pressure on government, and there's a lot of pressure here from anybody who's in a creative industry. So we are fiercely protective of our copyright and IP, believe that creatives should be paid, and that the tech companies, if they're so smart, if they can do everything in the world that they're doing, I'm sure that they can find a way to pay individual copyright owners for the copyright that they are currently stealing. Here we go.
Perfect. Sums it up brilliantly. Gillian, where do you stand on this? And when you're starting to work with someone, does it matter whether they used AI in the writing process?
Well, it sort of depends where that comes in, because when you actually go to upload your book, it'll ask you, is it AI written, AI generated, AI assisted? There's many different phrases. So you just have to be really clear that your stories are your stories. Your stuff is your stuff. And you can have AI help you, help me rephrase this paragraph or something like that. To me, that's AI assisted. That's not AI generated. Is if you sat back and said, write me a sales book. that to me is generated. And where do you cut it off? Because you can say, okay, I'm not going to use any AI. Well, it's like I get my videos transcribed. Guess what? That's AI. It's like every step of the way, it's AI. I wrote one of my books when I was sick, and I used Otter AI. And literally, I spoke my book into existence. That book is all me. And so, but would you say it was AI generated because I used text to speech or speech to text? No, I don't think so. But I think this stuff makes you aware. You have to be educated and you have to be aware of what's going on in the industry. And one of the things that we're doing is we've started putting in on our copyright page a disclaimer of like, no AI. We do not give approval for AI to scan this book, use this book. This is the content. If you have books that you want to make sure are, if you ever want to have a lawsuit, you go and do a copyright, like books are copyrighted as soon as we write them. But if you want legal protection, then you have to work within your country. And in the United States, I've paid to actually file a copyright for the books that were important for me, the ones that I would go to court for. The other ones, they're nice to have, but it's like if somebody stole them, I'm not going to die. But the stuff that's my real IP, my intellectual property that I might want to go to court, well, I'm going to go get them copyrighted. So I think it's all about being educated, following trusted people. So Jacqui, follow Jacqui. If she's up on all this stuff and she can point you to, hey, here's some scams. And those are the things that you need to look at. Is there's a lot of bad eggs in the book industry. And you have to be aware of, different companies that are scamming people and doing things. So we have to educate ourselves. Buyer beware, writer beware, author beware.
Oh, that makes a lot of sense to me, because here's the issue that I see, that AI content can be generated really, really quickly. It's indexed and then it appears in search results, and in theory that it can build visibility. But you're both saying there's something that it can't do. So I'm interested to know exactly what you might describe that as. What is it that AI can't do that? And Jacqui, you already touched on this about writing.
Yeah, look, it can't be a human, and I think that's so I'm really big about human agency, that we have to be responsible for what we type into AI. We have to be responsible for what it looking at what it brings back to us. And also AI generated work is not copyrightable, because to have copyright, you need to be a human being. So you can't copyright AI work, number one. And, AI tools, I use lots of them, but using AI tools is different from using ChatGPT or something to write for you. They're completely different issues. So I use AI, lots of AI tools. I do not use it to write. It can't write, and also it's not copyrightable. So kind of like, why would you bother?
Gillian?
I really have nothing more to add. I think Jacqui summed it up. It's the human element is important, and just making sure that you're aware and know what you're doing. And to be honest with you, I get nervous. Sometimes. It's like, I think I'm working safely with my AI tools. I pay for my programs. I'm not using the free version. But in essence, well, what if there's a hack or a leak, and if I've got half my book up there, and all of a sudden I go to Amazon and somebody's beat me to it with my own book? I don't know what would happen there, because now all of a sudden I got to have deep pockets to try and sue somebody. It's a challenge. So this is all moving so quickly. And that's the thing. It's moving so fast. It's we're in a very precarious position, because what's happening today and what's happening tomorrow is a whole different thing. I know of somebody who recently came on my podcast, and they were talking about people who they go and they do preview chapters. They like to share them with their audience. Here's my first chapter of this and this and this. And somebody's been collecting those chapters and made it its own book. So you're just like, okay, so now you're going to have to go and fight because that book is already up. So again, I just think you have to be really aware that things are moving fast, and you just have to get clear on how you're going to handle it all. And I don't have all the answers.
Yeah. And I think, Gillian, you raised a really good point there. And I say to people, if you really have strong IP, whether it's a system or a process, do not plug it into any AI. Keep it offline for as long as possible. And then that also goes to when you're writing your book, back to your goals and your audience. There'll be some stuff that you don't want to put in your book, that you want to keep close, that you don't want out there in the ethers, because potentially that's the stuff that you might sell as part of consulting or whatever else. So be very super clear about what you don't share. You don't have to share everything, and you shouldn't, and keep your IP in those sort of situations completely out of online world.
And this then leads to a very interesting question that Stephen Eng has just asked about the conversation about AI we're having. And he's wondering about what's going on with Anthropic. Oh, and this is a movable feast, isn't it? And I only heard yesterday that Mythos had escaped into the wild now. So that really means all bets are off in a really interesting way. But he says he works in a library, and he's seen Anthropic mentioned in articles about the impact of AI on authors. Do either of you have anything you'd like to add to this, or to mention, given that Anthropic is in the news a lot at the moment, I have to say?
Look, to me, Anthropic's like the rest of them. The broligarchs are all the same, might have different versions of it. They all steal IP and copyrighted material. They have built their business models around theft. It's unethical, it's illegal, but there's a power imbalance in terms of how we can pursue them. So until they come up, and they have the capacity to come up with a way to, in fact, pay the copyright owners for their stuff, they just choose not to.
Gillian?
Just watch the lawsuits. One of the people that I recommend following is Jane Friedman. Yeah. And she's kind of got her finger on the pulse of what's been going on in the courts and the court cases and all the different things. And writers are winning, they're having wins. And so watching what others do, I think it's just really so important. And also too, be vocal and show your support for people. When people are writing about these kind of things, champion them, share that knowledge on with other people, because, they're kind of like the pioneers. Those people are the pioneers, and we have to rah behind them. And it's really important for authors to be in communities and support one another. That is so important. We are not competitors. We are collaborators. We're all on the same team. And that's important, especially with all this AI stuff. Learn from others.
There's certainly a lot of mistakes to be made with AI, that is for sure. So I want to just go back to Jacqui and talk a bit more about the use of AI. And you've talked about using it to structure a book, but I want to know where it crosses the line and where it's still legitimate. And that feeds into a question that I also had about ghost writing, which is something that you do quite a lot, and I've done in the past as well. So where is this line, or is it a movable line, or is it a permeable line that can have different qualifications in terms of what people are doing at different times?
Yeah. So I've got a very clear view on this. It's strange that. So I don't use AI to write. I use AI tools to do a whole bunch of things. As Gillian said, I've got transcription AI, I've got all kinds of AI and various things. And I do a lot of research. Most of that's online, but it could be via Google, Wikipedia, my own research, delving deep into the footnotes of various things. I read books. I scan documents that have never seen the light of day. So I'm using all the what you'd call traditional primary and secondary research skills. And I just see AI tools as another tool to help me do my base research. I certainly use it when I'm coming up with book titles, with the content that maybe goes on the back of the book, because I'd use it to market test for different audiences. And so I'm using in the marketing part of books, I'm using it with my clients quite a lot, because it's really good to just test different phrases, different scenarios, different keywords. So not so much for the writing other than the tools, but certainly in that whole, what Gillian talks about, that whole visibility space. You might have different target audiences that you need to kind of create different media releases for, or keywords. And I use it a lot around that sort of stuff, different book titles. So I'm using it way more in that marketing part of the book and less so in the research, and definitely not in the writing.
You've been very clear about that, Jacqui. AI cannot write. Got the message loud and clear. 1 exclamation mark or 2. You don't have to answer that. That was a rhetorical question. So, Gillian, from a visibility and discoverability perspective, do you think that AI systems, the ones that are making recommendations and are surfacing expertise, can tell the difference between whether a book has been written by a human expert or one generated by AI, or doesn't it matter to them?
I don't think it matters to them, to be honest. And I think that it's always, again, if you're doing your visibility right, it's your book is the core of your marketing, and then there will be other things that surround it. So perhaps you've made a video that's like, why did I write this book? And that video is up on YouTube. If you've got closed captions, guess what? Closed captions are text that is being indexed by AI on YouTube or different Vimeo or whatever. So all of these things, podcast appearances, transcripts from your shows, if you're doing articles on LinkedIn, all of these come around your book. So the book is the core and everything else surrounds it in terms of visibility. So I think that if you just had a book that was generated by AI versus somebody who's writing their own book and they have everything sort of as a package, that's going to be treated a lot better. And I think AI is going to give that more credibility of recommending you as the expert. So I don't think it's one and done. I don't think AI could sit and say, I guess there's plagiarism checkers. So, we do have that. But again, how do you prove that? You could just be a crappy writer. You just never know.
Yes, well, there is that to be said for that, is for sure. I want to turn our attention to senior leaders now and why they should be writing books. Should they be writing books? Jacqui, you particularly have had a long history with working with people at very high levels, writing their own business books, having ghostwritten books for them, writing company histories. Do you see that there is an element now of senior leaders going, well, I can use AI now to help me write my book, and it reduces the barriers towards getting a book out for them?
Interesting question. And the answer to that is no, actually, because I think if you go back to, so if you're dealing with people at that level and even companies, they, I think, are even more aware of the fact that if their book is not the best it can be, and unless they've written it or had it ghostwritten, their peer group criticism would be unbearable. So I think that they are, in fact, more aware than most people that unless they can literally stand behind their book, like this client, literally stand behind their book and say, I wrote this, and this is really what I believe, and this is my insight. You know, the whole thing about AI is actually they don't want to go anywhere near that. They want to go, in fact, to that human truth, credibility, reputation. Their reputation is on the line. And if for any, you know, so if there's any hint of something that's sloppy or AI or whatever, they're going to run a million miles, and they do. And I guess, to be quite honest, they can afford to spend time to write or pay someone to write and get it done properly, whereas other people perhaps don't.
It makes sense. Gillian, are you finding the same in the States? And you probably work with other people too, business owners and people who also have a book in them. How are they responding to this?
Well, I think you can use AI to do a heck of a lot of the heavy lifting for you. And I actually encourage people to do that. And I do that with my clients and help them, because I think what happens is you become like a senior executive, a senior leader, and you get to a point and you just say, I have created so much content and expertise that I don't want to start from scratch. And, or at least the clients I'm working with, they don't feel necessarily that they're writers, and they really don't want to do that looking at a blank screen. So when I work with people, what I do is I help them go through their existing content. That could be an online course. That could be a webinar they've given, podcasts they've done, LinkedIn Lives that they've done. And what we can do is use AI to go through and pull out what are the gems here. And then we can even have it say, okay, what are some common themes that are coming up over and over again? And here's what here's what our goal is with this book. Here's who we're writing to. And then have AI help us with that structure. So of course, you're going to have to go back in and do all the cleanup and make it your own and write it your own. But it can do that sort of that big dump and take that and make it into something logical that's the bare bones for the book in the first place.
Jacqui, anything to add to that?
No, look, and I do that myself. So again, it's about, I think, this differentiation between AI tools and knowing which tools to use for what, and what not to use it for. So it's not whilst I say I'm not anti-AI, I just don't think it can write. But there's lots of things it can do. But as Gillian and I have already said, we're the ones that have to have clarity as to our goals and our objectives and what we're trying to do. And we want to make a positive difference in the world, not just fill it up with more content.
And slop. All right. I'd like to know some of my own questions now. I'd like to know which is the most read format of a book now. Is it a hard copy, a Kindle version, or an audio book?
Well, it depends. It depends what book, what audience. And as Gillian and I have said numerous times, if you understand your audience, one of the key things you need to understand is where are they going to get their information currently, and how are they digesting that information. So if you've got an audience that actually is really primarily ebook orientated, you maybe need to think about whether you put a lot of effort into a print book, much as that would upset me, but that's the reality. And then other groups of people are way more interested in audio. So there's not a set number. And in fact, I've got clients who do all three, but they might produce them at different times. Some produce them all at once. Others, stage them, because what they do is they launch their print book. 6 months later, they launch their ebook. And then a year later, they might launch their audio book. So again, audience structure, visibility, it becomes part of a longer term visibility marketing campaign and understanding your audience.
Oh, I like that idea of splitting up the production of it. I wish I'd thought of that when I put mine out, actually. I think there's a lot of things I wish I had done differently when I go back and think about it now. But I also am very conscious of the fact that books do need to be promoted over a period of time and, excuse me, and not just put on the shelf and forgotten about. Gillian, have you got a preference for formats of books?
I believe that you should do them as many ways possible because we all absorb content differently. I like to read books. I like to have a book in my hands, but I also like a Kindle book because I'm a digital nomad, so I can't carry all my books with me. I like to highlight. I hate highlighting real books, but I love highlighting in Kindle books because to me, I'd be a monster if I was highlighting a real book. And then audiobooks are great for when I'm in the car and I'm driving around. And if you think about it, like one of the things I love about Amazon is that they have Whisper Sync, which means that if you buy the audio version of a book and you also have the ebook version, they're actually synced together. So you could be listening to it in the car and then you get to chapter 3 and you go in the house and now you can pick up your Kindle and guess what? It's at chapter 3. It's ready to go. And, you know, to me, that's like the best of all worlds. Now, of course, I'm going to challenge you both by throwing in another topic because the newest thing that Amazon is doing is now AI for audiobooks. It's in beta. I don't have it yet. And to be honest with you, it's not that I don't like AI. I do like AI. I think it's good. But to me, if you're doing a nonfiction book, because I would have a different attitude if it's fiction, but if you're doing a nonfiction book like yours, Lynnaire, I would want to get you in my head. I would expect to hear you. So if all of a sudden I had somebody with an American accent from Texas reading your book, it'd be like, whoa, that's a disconnect. And yet this is becoming very popular because it's free. Amazon says you just choose who you want, but words don't get pronounced right. It's weird. There's a cadence to the audio of an AI. So I would ask you both, I'm hijacking the show. What do you guys think about that?
Well, I found it really difficult to read my book when I did the audio version, much more difficult than I expected, given my professional background, but it really was extremely difficult. So I admire very much anybody who can read their own book. But I do think it's an extremely good idea for people who are out there in the public eye and who people can hear their voice in their head when they're reading their book as a hard copy. You want to be able to hear the actual voice when you hear it. Now, our previous Prime Minister, Jacinda Ardern, has just recently published her memoir, and I'm dying to know whether she's done the audio version herself or even if there is an audio version, because I wouldn't want to be listening to somebody else reading that and not be in her voice. That's my thoughts on that one. Thanks for the question, Jacqui.
My view, I guess it goes back to this thing about human versus synthetic. And I've seen them, and I've had a couple of clients use the synthetic thing, not the Amazon one, but there's 2 or 3. I mean, there's several out there, and some are better than others, quite frankly. So again, it's about understanding the tools that are available, what tool that you might choose out of the ones that are available for the synthetic voiceover. And I've tested some of them. Some of them are awful and some of them are not bad. Again, it goes back to the goals and how much time you're prepared to spend or the money you're prepared to spend. Again, all of those things just then wrap up into what are you trying to do? Do you want to be cheap and cheerful and get something out and do it, as quickly and cheaply as possible, which probably means it's pretty crap? Or are you really, interested in making a positive difference and owning your stuff and being proud about what you do and being the human part of that?
Well, that's a great place to nearly finish on. I've just got one final question for you both. I'll keep this simple. Finish this sentence. A business book is worth writing when, Jacqui?
You want to make a positive difference in the lives of other people.
Oh, wow. Gillian?
You want to share your message and your lessons with the world, because everything that you know, somebody else needs to hear. I truly believe everybody has a book in them.
Or in your case, and in Jacqui's case, several books in them. Ladies, I really appreciate you spending the time talking with us today about books, and I cannot believe we will not be doing this again, because AI is moving at such a rapid pace. We're such fans of books, all of us, that I think that there is going to be some monumental moves in how this all comes together, whether that's from the copyright side or from the ability of AI to help us with our books. And the new tools that are going to be available, because we haven't even touched on any of the design side and the imagery side. Yeah. And there's a lot going on in that area too. So I want to just say thank you both, Jacqui, for joining us today.
Better.
And Gillian. Thank you very much for taking the time. Now, we'll be back again next month with another interesting topic to do with AI and LinkedIn, no doubt. I want to thank Mel Richards, who's been in the background making our event swimmingly go forward today without any problems whatsoever. Thank you, Mel, and to Meryl Cass for making sure we've had so many interesting people in our audience. If you've been watching live today, thank you for your comments. We really do appreciate it. So thanks again from me. Thank you for joining our Linkability Insights live stream today, and we'll see you on the next one. Bye for now.